Welcome to Resilience in Life and Leadership with your host, Stephanie Olson, speaker, author, addiction, sexual violence, and resiliency expert. Hello, I'm excited to introduce to you Kyle Gillette. Kyle has helped small business owners and leaders around the world to take their businesses from good to great. He is an ICF certified coach, behavioral analyst, and creator of the SAGE Mindset Leadership Framework that helps people gain clarity, build confidence, and generate new clientele. As a mindset coach who specializes in helping clients understand how their thoughts affect their lives and business, Kyle understands what it takes for someone's mindset to change. And the SAGE Mindset Leadership Framework is amazing. And Kyle just really kind of breaks it down and explains exactly what it's all about so that others can have the most influence possible. So let's welcome Kyle Gillette. Hello, and welcome to Resilience in Life and Leadership. And I'm excited to introduce Kyle Gillette to you. Kyle, welcome.
Hey, Stephanie, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. So you are doing some cool things in coaching and business leadership and all of that good stuff. So how are you helping? Well, first of all, tell me a little bit about how you got into that and then how you're helping business owners and leaders around the world right now.
The backstory is based on my experience working in a men's mentoring program for about 9 years.
Nice.
I got the interesting story to that is when I was in college, I went to Cal Poly, and that's a school on the Central Coast of California. And I was sitting in my apartment at this makeshift desk that I'd made, talking to my parents on the phone, sitting in a chair similar to the one that I'm sitting in now.
Okay.
And I was 30 pounds overweight, covered in poison oak, and
Oh,
about 10 units behind in school. And I had 2 quarters to figure all that stuff out.
okay.
I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, no idea what I wanted to do with the work future. But I'd gone on a trip to India, and one of the guys that went from California to India with us, he said, "Hey, there's this job opportunity at this mentoring program." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me about it." So he told me about it, and I went to the interview. And when I went to the interview, it was this beautiful, idyllic setting with rolling green hills in the background. And I came in this driveway, and you take a ride onto the driveway and go over this bridge with this beautiful white painted rails. And on your right, it's this chain link fence with a bunch of barking dogs. And so I'm like, what's going on here? And
Okay.
then you get to this space where there's a green lawn and a flagpole, American flagpole, and this perfect farmhouse, white farmhouse wraparound porch, cement walkway up to the front door, and then off in the distance is this other set of chain link fences with big dog houses in it. And obviously, this is the nonprofit was supported by a pet resort, and so that's what all the fences were about. But long story short, I did the interview. I was asked on the spot if I wanted the job. I said yes. And then for the next 9 years, I was a part of that program and was mentored by a gentleman that had run about 30 different businesses, and several of them were very successful. So he retired early and bankrolled this nonprofit. And then eventually the nonprofit started to sustain itself. And I worked through the different positions in the organization while being mentored.
Nice.
And that was my introduction to coaching. There's more to the story, of course, but that was my introduction to coaching.
Yeah. So I'm stuck on, so I run a nonprofit in my real world, and I think bankrolling the nonprofit, that sounds amazing. that doesn't happen very often. That's fabulous.
Yeah, he supported it, I think, for about, this is a number kind of, I'm making it up a little bit, but I think it's fairly accurate. For about 5 years, it was just him and his wife could continue to be able to put money into it until it became self-sustainable. And because we didn't get donations, it was self-sustainable through the pet resort. So that was pretty cool. And everything that comes with learning how to run a nonprofit plus a business with it. There's actually multiple businesses inside the nonprofit. So it was good lessons.
So you really kind of learned a whole capful of everything with the mentoring, with running a business, nonprofit. I mean, it was kind of a built-in training ground, really.
Yeah, and the beauty of it was, the SAGE framework could talk about accountability in it, and Jack was is the president, and he met with me every Tuesday for at least an hour and a half at lunch,
Mm,
and just
wow.
taught me, coached me, schooled me, slapped me around a little bit sometimes, this kind of
It's
stuff to
good for
help.
you. Yep.
Exactly, exactly. So I mean, if you count up the hours of lunches times 9 years, you
Yeah.
talk about a school of business. So I'm
Mm,
very, very fortunate to have experienced that and then been able
yeah.
to turn that into some of the things that I'm doing now, plus a bunch of other things that he
Yeah.
taught.
And someone really pouring life into you, really. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Well, first talk a little bit. I'm just curious about the mentoring that you were doing to the men that you were working with.
Yeah, so these guys were 18 and 25-year-olds. The program still exists. It's a little bit of a different iteration of it now, but
Yeah.
when I was there would be two guys that lived in the house with up to six other guys. So the two guys were called house leaders, and we helped them learn everything from job skills to
Mm,
cooking skills to communication skills, everything in that set of just life.
wow.
And the goal was at the end of the program, they'd commit to 6 months, and at the end of the program, that they would have what's called a life map. And that life map would answer three questions: where am I? Where do I want to go? And how do I get there in six fundamental areas of life? So, mental, spiritual, emotional, physical,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And they would have to create a map of where they were going to go and how they're going to get there before they could leave the program. If they had a good life map in place, then they would graduate the program and then
Wow.
go and pursue that map. So that was the gist of the program. A lot of the guys had drug and alcohol and
Mm-hmm.
um, various other histories that were rough. Some people didn't, but a lot of them did. And so
Yeah.
we had a lot of attrition. But if someone made it all the way through, they tended to have decent success, if not great success afterward, because I'm still in contact with several of the
Oh,
guys.
that's awesome. So when you left, did you have a plan to start doing your own coaching, or what did that transition look like?
Okay, so you called me out. So there's some irony here because when I left, my wife and I got married in the middle of all that, had a couple kids, and my oldest was 3,
Mm,
and we didn't want her to be in preschool or to go to school without having grandparents around. But
mhm.
my parents are in California and her parents are up in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
And so we had to make a decision, which is possibly the most agonizing and difficult decision of my life, because I have a really good relationship with my parents. It's even better now than it was before, and it was already
Mm,
good.
wow.
But I had to give up that relationship to a certain degree, and that
Yeah.
sucked.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
hard.
so ultimately, it wasn't I only, but we chose to
Mhm.
move up here. And when we moved, my intention was just simply, if we're going to move from here, I want to have the type of impact that I had at the Alpha Academy up here in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
That was the vague dream, vague vision, with this slight thought that maybe I'd open a pet resort or maybe I'd start a men's mentoring program. And those two pieces haven't happened, but I'm doing this coaching thing instead, which is having that type of impact that I wanted to have.
Yeah, and it really is. I mean, it's really very much like mentoring. And so tell me about mindset coaching, specifically the Sage mindset. Tell me what that is.
Yeah, so when I worked in HR at a mega church for 2.5 years and got exposed to something called DISC assessments, and most people are familiar with those. And if
Yep,
you're not,
yep.
it's a behavioral analysis of the person. It's not a test, but it looks at your behaviors in 4 categories.
Yeah.
And so I had the chance to get certified in that, and then another assessment as well. And then I was tasked with doing assessments on everyone that worked at the church, which was over 100 people. So
Wow.
I had the opportunity to assess 100 people and do 1 hour long meetings with each of them to go over the results.
Okay.
So I had this blitz of behavioral analysis and this opportunity to really shape my ability in that.
Mm,
And when I was almost done with that process, I started to do workshops with
mm,
DISC within the church, but also outside the church. And then I got
okay.
paid to do it outside the church. And I went,
That's
huh,
great.
wait a second, maybe there's something here. And then I got engaged in the John Maxwell team stuff
Yeah,
and
yeah.
certified through them. And I went, huh, there's something here. And so I
Mm,
gave the church notice and eventually stepped away and started my business. But disc isn't mine. I can't do
Right.
whatever I want with it.
Right.
And so I took several months to think about, okay, what's my thing? What's my
Hmm.
tool? What's my whatever? And I had all these, I love alliteration and acronyms because it makes, for me, my memory's not that great. So it makes it easier for me to remember things.
Right.
And I was laying in bed one night. My wife's a nurse, and at the time she was
Mhm.
doing nursing at night. And so she wasn't home. So I'm just in bed at night and I wake up to a voice. I feel like it was God speaking to
Yeah.
me. And the voice said self-awareness. And
Wow.
I went, oh, okay. And I jumped out of bed, ran into the kitchen, ran past my kids' rooms, and sat down at the table for the next 4 hours. I just sat
Wow.
there shivering in my boxers, beginning the, the whole beginnings of the Sage framework.
That's amazing.
So that's kind of the very beginning of what it is now.
Okay. That very cool. So tell me about it. What does that look like?
So SAGE stands for four things, and I do this too fast, so I'm going to slow down a little bit. So
Okay.
SAGE is self-awareness,
Okay.
obviously, then accountability,
Okay.
growth, and empowerment. And the way that I
Love
describe
that.
it is it's a leadership house, your SAGE
Mm,
leadership house. And self-awareness is the foundation to leadership. And when I say self-awareness, I'm talking about your ability to understand where you're coming from and your emotions, how you're presenting yourself with your body language, your tone of voice, all that stuff,
yes.
but also being able to read how other people are bringing it back to you and then how you're impacting them. So it's a
It's
high
huge.
level of emotional intelligence.
It's huge.
And then accountability is the nails and the, or I'm sorry, accountability is, yeah, the nails and the hammer to keeping
Mm-hmm.
your leadership house together. Without accountability, no matter how beautiful your leadership looks, no matter how
Right.
much influence you have, the house will crumble and it's going to hurt a lot of people in the
Mm-hmm.
process. And we've seen
Mm-hmm.
this with a number of leaders, just
Yeah.
even in the recent history, right?
Yeah.
And then growth is the walls and the roof. And it's the idea that in leadership, there's times where we need to remodel. So sometimes you move a wall, you adjust things, and you have to remodel the way you do things as you grow in your leadership, but also as those that you influence need you to make adjustments to them, and then they also adjust to you. And then I break the metaphor when I talk about the roof, because there's times when, John Maxwell talks about that leadership lid.
Yeah.
There's times when we need to blow the roof off of our leadership
Right.
and just grow and expand and become an even more influential and impactful leader. So that's the G, the growth. And then empowerment is the windows and doors. So this is the ability for people to, when they're outside of your leadership, they're going, what's going on in there? I want to be a
Mm,
part of that. I want to be influenced by that guy or that lady
yeah.
and be able to grow in my own ways. And then the opposite is true too, where the people that you are influencing and empowering, they look out the windows and door and they go, I think I'm ready to go do my own thing. And you as a sage leader say, heck yeah, go do it,
Yeah.
because you're so full of empowering people and your abilities aren't tied to the people that you work with, and you're not limited by, if people step away, you're empowered and so are they to step
Yeah.
away. So that's
Exactly.
that's the way I like to describe it.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think that that self-awareness piece is so critical because self-awareness is one of those interesting things because either you have self-awareness initially, and so you can gain that and you can really look at that, or you have none and you need to cultivate it and learn how to. I've rarely met people with no self-awareness, but I have met people with like, seriously, I'm not sure you're quite getting who you are. So, I mean, how do you help people cultivate that if they are not quite self-aware?
I think one of the, let's call it easy. I don't know if easy is the
Hmm.
right word here, but one of the easier ways to do it is get objective data on yourself.
Okay.
And one way is to use the DISC assessment. I mean, I use
Yeah.
assessments with my clients because they are putting their subjective responses to the assessment, but then the assessment spits out objective data. And
Okay.
so It's this way to look at yourself from a quote meta perspective, but also
Right.
objectively. So you can go, oh, I guess I am a fast-paced person, and sometimes I can be too direct, or
Yeah.
I run people over because it's about my agenda all the time. And then obviously all the positive things that you get from those assessments
Right.
as well.
Right.
But that's a really great foundational piece.
Hmm.
The other thing is vulnerability. It's your willingness to be open to feedback, to
Yeah.
be open to perspectives that aren't yours, to see things from different angles.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways, but I think those two are pretty vital.
And being humble
Yeah,
and coachable,
yeah,
because I think the one key thing I've seen in a lot of people who struggle with self-awareness is yeah, I'm good. I don't need to learn anymore. I've got it all in the bag. And so that humility, and I'll tell you, that was one of those things. It wasn't necessarily in my leadership role, but you know, God and I did a year-long study, just the two of us, on pride, and it was pretty painful. So I'm just saying.
yes. Yes, I might, that is pride is a rough one.
Yeah,
Uh, it makes me think about when people, if they read this really long book, and the Bible is a great example of that because it's a super long book,
yeah, yeah,
and they go, "Oh, I've read it." Okay, but there's no way that you can read a book that long, or really any book,
yeah.
even if it's only 50 pages long, because the author put so much time and energy into that. And obviously God did as well when he wrote the Bible, that there's so
Right.
much more to it than just I read it once. And I think that when as leaders we go, oh no, I know myself, I've got it figured
Hmm.
out. That's a big problem because your owner manual is complicated.
Yeah,
It's very
yeah,
complicated. And you need
absolutely.
other people to help interpret the instructions because sometimes it's hard
Right.
to read our own instructions. I mean, how
Well,
many men don't
it
read
is.
instructions at all?
It's true. That is so true. And I got to tell you, I might be guilty of that occasionally. I
Right.
just, yeah, I'm not even going to go there. Okay. So, but that goes back to kind of that accountability and growth piece, because having people around you that are solid, leaders that maybe even more mature in their leadership, have more wisdom, having those people around to say, okay, now this is what I was thinking. Is that something? Am I off the rails? Things like that. That accountability piece. Can you speak to that and what that looks like for leaders?
Yes. So I love this subject. It's probably my favorite when it
Yeah.
comes to Sage because it is the heart
Yeah.
of Sage. It's the heart of what makes someone successful, and fundamentally, the reason it makes someone successful. This I think this is truth. This truth came from a friend of mine, and he asked me, what makes someone successful?" And I'm like, "I don't know." 'Cause what I mean, just a blanket statement for
Right.
what makes
Right.
someone successful. Like that's kind of a crazy question. And then I said, "I don't know, what is it?" And he said that it's to do what you say you're going to do.
Mm,
And I'm like, sat back. I think we're on the phone. I think I remember just like pausing for a
yeah.
moment. And it's true. And that's accountability. That's the heart. That's integrity. That's the heart of
Right.
accountability is to do
Right.
what you say you're going to do. But I love talking about it because I'm very practical and I
Mhm.
want people to have tools. I want people to have a simple process they can follow to be more accountable, to
Mhm.
have the sage approach in their life. And so I'll briefly describe what I call the accountability pass. So another acronym. So we're doing compound acronyms
Okay.
now.
Okay. All right. I got it.
So the PASS stands for four things, and the P is passive,
Okay.
the A is active, the S is structures or stuff, and the S is self.
Okay.
So before I jump into the beginning of the acronym, I realized that no one can make me do anything and no one can make you do anything. And we need to start with commitment. We have to commit. And if anybody's watching the Olympics right now, there's a lot of people there's a lot of athletes that they're doing the snowboarding and the skiing, and they're doing those
Right.
enormous jumps. It's crazy what they're doing.
Yeah.
But they're going so fast that when they get into the trough of that jump, no matter how hard they try to stop themselves, they're still going to go off that jump. And if they try
Mhm.
to stop themselves, it's going to be a disaster.
Mm.
Or if they just own it and commit, they're going to do the jump and they're going to have a way better chance of success. And that's the
Right.
same thing when it comes to accountability. You have to commit. First, you have to make your commitment to the project, the goal, your intentions, your integrity, whatever it is, you make that commitment. So that's really the self piece.
Yeah.
But to help you get there, the other three pieces are like a check engine light in your car. Passive accountability is you're telling people the why behind what you're trying to achieve. So, Stephanie, when you think about some of the things that you have going on in your business or your life right now, what's maybe a simpler thing that you're wanting to achieve this quarter or this year?
We are looking at internal growth. So instead of externally, just we've been growing like crazy. So now we're trying to build growth within our team.
Okay, so the next piece of this is now you know you're trying to create internal
Mhm.
growth within the team, which then goes why? What makes you want to do that? What's the story behind wanting to grow internally, right?
Right. Do you want me to answer? So
If you got an answer, yeah.
yeah, I do. Yeah, because we have been growing so quickly and at such a fast pace that we realize that we have almost neglected, really looking internally and training our staff, with just true excellence because the growth has been like this. And so we're taking this year to just stop that external growth and really just invest in our staff.
That's it right there. That last phrase was
Mm.
it. That's the story that you get to tell other people, that you're growing your team because you want to invest in them. That's the
I love that.
story.
Yeah.
And you share that story to 20, 25, 30 people. And not everybody is going to care. Let's be honest. Not
Yeah.
everybody
Right.
cares about your story. But if you just tell them you're going to do internal growth, they're like, so. But if you say you're investing in your people because you haven't been in the last couple of years and you really want to see them grow, that's a story that people get on board with. And then they follow up with you a week later and say, hey, how's it going with that growth, Stephanie? What's your team doing? What are they up to? And that creates this whole different level of accountability for you, because you know they're going to come back around and
Yes.
ask you. Not
Oh, I love
everybody,
that.
but enough of them will. So
Yeah.
you got to know your story though. What's the reason behind what you're doing? Obviously, there's the bigger why for all
Right.
that we do, but
Right.
we need to find the smaller whys, if you will, behind these other things that we're trying to achieve. So that's
I
passive.
love that.
Active accountability is taking that same story and sharing it with someone, 2 to 3 people typically at the most, and asking them and saying, hey, this is what I'm trying to achieve, and this is why. I would love for you to support me on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And it doesn't have to be this technical, but
Yeah. Yeah.
to support me in achieving this. And I would love to return that accountability to you. So that's essentially what you're doing. You could say it in whatever way you want. But then you would meet with them on the phone, in person, or obviously like you and I are on
Right.
Zoom.
Right.
But it can't be text messages. It can't be emails. It needs to be, quote, eyeball to eyeball, or at least ear hole to
Yes.
ear hole.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not active. And the reason it's active is because they are coming to you and you are going to them, and you're having this purposeful conversation about progress being made, hiccups that you're bumping into, and discussing what can shift as you help them with what they're trying to achieve, and they help you.
Oh, that's
So
fabulous.
that's active.
Okay.
And then structures are the things that we put in place to help us achieve these things. So an example would be a contract that you write with yourself, or a contract that you write with your team and say, this is what you can expect of me. And then you sign it, Stephanie, and say, I'm giving this to all of you. I don't know how many team members you have, but you give it to every team member.
Yeah.
And now they know that that's what they can expect of you. That's a
I love that.
structure that creates super high accountability. You can do it with yourself, with to-do lists, with calendaring stuff. Obviously,
Yeah.
as you meet with people, that's a calendar is its own accountability. And then it can be as simple as putting your gym bag in your shotgun of your car so that after work, you go to the gym,
Yep.
right? It's just these simple things that we put in place to create accountability. And then, of course, self is the last one, and I already mentioned that, and that's all about commitment. So that's the accountability path. So it took a little longer to describe it than maybe I intended, but
No,
that's what it is.
that's fabulous because you can use that for every facet of your life. I mean, that just really, and you just kind of used it for accountability with working out. I mean, you can use that with
Yep.
parenting, with business. I love that. Um, I need to write that down though, because I'll forget. I'm terrible with acronyms. I am the worst, but for some reason, but that is, I love that. I can remember the word pass.
A
That's good.
little mindset, a little bit mindset coaching right here.
Okay,
Don't
good.
say that anymore.
Oh, sorry.
Say it.
Okay. Yes. Good. I'm really good at acronyms.
There you go. No, but that
That's
stuff
true.
works.
Yeah.
You create, I mean, it's cognitive dissonance. The more
Yep.
cognitive dissonance, excuse me, I know what I'm trying to say here, you can create, the better,
Yes.
because especially if it's positive. Obviously we want positive.
Right.
It, your subconscious is forced to go, wait a second, you said you're good at acronyms, but do you know what ESPN stands for? Do you remember what PASS stands for? And then your subconscious says, well, you told me I'm good at it. And so it works to get you to be
Oh,
better at it. And
I
that's a
like,
tiny,
okay.
tiny example.
All
But
right.
yeah,
Okay. So, and that self-talk, that's huge anyway, with what we tell ourselves, what we're, yeah. Okay. Very good. Now, let me ask you a question, because you were talking about accountability and putting those structures in place and committing. What about knowing when to say no?
mm,
I have heard people say, and not that long ago, I just heard someone who is doing incredible things, but she made the comment, say yes, always say yes. And I thought, ooh, that's
mm.
because if I said yes to everything, I would not show up to a lot of
Yeah,
things. So speak to that if you can.
sure. I think a lot of people think about the why, and they
Mm,
want to say, figure out your why. I think
yeah.
that's important
Yeah.
for sure. And it might be number two or three on my list personally.
Right.
But what's important is the who. I
Mm,
believe the who is the most important. In my life, it starts with God, that starts with
yeah.
Jesus, but then
Yeah.
it comes down to me and my family
Right.
are the next two. If I can get the who dialed in properly, and I don't mean dialed in meaning that I'm controlling the way my kids behave
Right.
or the
No.
way
Yeah.
things happen with my wife, whatever. I just mean that my mind is
Where your
right as it
focus
relates to
is.
the who exactly.
Hmm.
That's the first piece. And then second, that your life is not your business and your business is not your
Mm,
life. If that's where we stay as leaders, we're creating a huge disservice to those that we lead, because
yes.
they are a who in our lives, and that their who-ness is way more important than
Right.
whatever they're doing for you or whatever you're
Yeah.
doing for them. It's about the person. In the coaching world, they teach you to coach the person, not the problem.
Hmm.
Transformation comes by coaching the person. Problem solving comes by coaching the problem. But transformation is what ultimately I'm in my business for, not for solving problems. That's a byproduct.
Right.
But
Right.
it's about the who piece. And if we can get that correct, and get our hearts right as it relates to that, then we're good to go. And the way you do that is you do it with accountability. You bring the
Yeah.
right people into your life. And there's another portion of that accountability that I didn't mention, which is the board of advisors. Do
Hmm.
you have a personal board of advisors? And I don't mean a board that sits at an executive table. I mean a group of 5 to 7 people
Yeah.
that you can really lean on and trust to give you that perspective, that advice. It can be a coach, it can be a family member, it
Right.
could be a business owner, whatever. But to keep yourself from saying yes too often, I think that's
Hmm.
a big piece of it, is figuring out the who. And there's some tactical things as well that I teach people to do to help with that. But I think it starts with who.
I love that. And especially, so as a believer, um, I think there are some real not there are real strong differences that sometimes world leadership doesn't necessarily understand. And that's okay, I'm surrendering this to you, that this is your business or your organization. And you know what, Jesus, I'm going to let you run it. And so if it's Holy Spirit run, then that creates a whole different set of, okay, this is the direction I'm going. So that who piece is so critical, because if you're a believer, that should be the real, the where everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a presentation tomorrow that I'm doing, and that I can't remember the title of it off the top of my head, but there's a part in the middle of it where I ask, who is the real CEO of your business?
Hmm.
And obviously it's tugging at what we're talking about here. And that question came to me, it didn't really come to me. Someone brought it to me, I should say, on a coaching conversation. I was working with this coach. Her name's Kate, and she's really a good coach, and she doesn't give herself enough credit. But anyway, she's a great coach. And we got in the middle of this discussion conversation, and it moved towards, okay, how do you know where to go with your business, and who do you turn to, and all these things? Because leadership can be very isolating,
very lonely.
yeah. It's hard. That's why accountability is so huge, but it's also lonely in those moments as well, because you can't just pick up the phone every time when you're feeling lonely or stuck on a decision.
Yeah.
And at the end of that conversation, the result of it was I needed to have a 30-minute CEO conversation every week. And what that became is I meet with God every day. And if you're not someone that is a Christian background, this still works. You just meet with yourself. It's super powerful. But the way I do it is for 30 minutes from 8 to 8:30 on Monday for the last, I think it's been 16 weeks. I meet with God and I ask, I read a prayer, read a verse, something like that. And then I go through and we look at, there's reflection time, there's replying time, like requesting time, excuse me, and there's relying time. And during those three phases, and there's no particular order necessarily, but during those three phases, it allows me to kind of figure out what's going on in the business and where things should go. And I've gotten clarity on pricing. I've gotten clarity on the book that I'm writing. I've gotten clarity on the app that's being developed, and just peace in general. And it's like, if you think about, just I'm gonna get on soapbox for a second here, but if you think about how we're supposed to tithe, whatever people's perspectives are on that, let's just say we're supposed to, okay, whatever. A tithe is 10%, and 10% of a 40-hour week is 4 hours. Okay, so can I give them 30 minutes of those 4 hours? That should be, you know what I mean? And I know that's probably not even biblically true, but we need to give ourselves. Yeah, exactly. You nailed it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and even in, like you said, whether you're talking biblical or not, even that perspective, we have a consultant that comes in and does, kind of that operational system stuff. And there is a spot where we are supposed to, as leaders, take time out of our week. So every month we have maybe, we're supposed to have an hour or something where we just really reflect on the month. It could be a week. I'm doing it wrong, but it's just, you're just supposed to reflect on that time. And that gives you the opportunity to think about, okay, what can I do differently? What can I do better? What, all those things. I think that's so important, but hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. And okay, so you mentioned those questions, which makes me think about this other thing that I do. So I do a weekly review. Sounds like you do as well. That's extremely powerful, looks at the vision, values, goals, those types of things. But part of it is I do something called a MOLO, another acronym. So I'm just jamming your brain with acronyms.
I know, seriously. Okay. So far, SAGE, PASS, MOLO. Okay, go ahead. Got it.
I'm just going to try to jumble people's brains with all these acronyms. Hopefully you got some bunch of listeners that do appreciate acronyms. And for those of you that don't, and if you don't, I'm sorry, but that's how my brain works.
No, I think they're good. Yeah.
So MOLO is more of, less of, and it's the idea of asking. A lot of people have heard of this before, but it's the idea of asking 5 questions about a particular topic. I've learned that it's really important to get very specific. And I do this weekly on Saturdays, but essentially I pick a topic, personal, professional, doesn't matter. What did I do on Saturday? Oh man, can I remember? I was focusing on the website development.
Yes.
And so I said to myself, okay, what should I do more of? What should I do less of? What should I start doing? What should I stop doing? And what should I keep doing? And these are great questions to ask only if you get real specific. If you don't, then it's too nebulous and it becomes overwhelming.
Right.
The other key I've learned, I've done this for like 4 years, so I've learned a lot from this process. But the other thing I've learned is you don't want to create any more than 3 at the most 5 actions from your answers to your questions. Otherwise, you're really overwhelmed.
Yes.
So, because when you get even more than three can be overwhelming. So when you get any more than three, you get to this place of like, I'm not going to do it because it's too many.
Mm,
But if you have three, then you could actually tackle those over the next few weeks or the next week
right.
and make some real progress on that particular topic. So,
That is so good. Do you have any advice or suggestions, or maybe even an acronym of how we can um, better predict our time? That's probably my biggest downfall. I'll say, I'm going to do this and I can totally get that done by tomorrow. And then I realize, okay, that wasn't even a realistic goal for myself, that I need, so much more time to get this piece accomplished.
yeah, you said better predict our time.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So I heard, I might screw this up a little bit, but I heard someone say that we have a lot less time in a day than we think, but a lot
Yes.
more in a week. We have a
Yeah.
lot less time in a week than we think, but a lot more in a month. A lot
Okay.
less in a month than we do in a year, and so on and so forth. And that's really interesting. I don't know how much I 100% agree with that, but I think we put too much on ourselves in the immediate moment.
Yeah.
We don't realize what we really could accomplish if we recognize that the time can be stretched out and we can
Right.
leverage the time in a healthy way. I think that one of the simplest rules is the Pomodoro technique or block scheduling, and you put those
Mm-hmm.
together. It's very helpful. For people that haven't heard of the Pomodoro, it's basically 20 to 25 minute increments of focused time on a particular subject or task. And then you take a 1 minute to 5 minute break, and then you jump back in. I find that can be really effective, and I kind of naturally operate that way.
Mm-hmm.
But what often people like me struggle with is actually taking a break. Uh,
Yes. Yes, exactly.
and we
Yeah.
just go freaking go. I mean, my
Mm-hmm.
my kids and wife went to Mesa, Arizona for some family time with all the family kind of congregated there, and
Nice.
then I didn't go, and a couple other family members didn't, and we just worked. But because nobody was home, I get up at 5:30 and I'd do my normal routine, eat breakfast, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd start working at 6:30 and I'd finish at 6:30.
Oh my
And,
gosh.
and it was no big deal.
Yep.
Because there was no kid.
No responsibilities other than that. Right.
What's unfortunate is some people do that despite having those other responsibilities.
Mm,
And that's a problem, right? That's something that if you're like that at times, I'm not here to beat you up, but if you're
yeah.
like that at times for the listeners, then you got to check that. And
Yeah.
that's a part of predicting your time. If you've got this if you work 60, 70, 80 hours in a week, how is that impacting the who in your
Right.
life? And that's a big question, because what's most important right now? Yes, we know we need to grow our businesses. Yes, they need to be successful, all that, but at what cost is the
Yeah.
other question. And that brings us back around to accountability again, because
Mhm.
accountability is ultimately about the who. It's not really about the what, it's about the who. And that's why you bring people into accountability. It's three of the parts of the equation. It's passive, active, and self. Those are three different pieces that are related to people. Structures is the only piece that's related to
Wow.
things. So you got to get the who part correct. But I think one of an easier way to predict what's possible. I love that you said
Hmm.
it that way. I really appreciate that. Is taking the idea of the 40-hour work week or
Yeah.
50-hour work week. Let's say 50.
Okay.
And in that 50 is a giant, massive whirlwind of things that you're getting done. There's 80% of it that you're just going to get done.
Hmm.
And it's just going to happen whether you
Right.
try or not. It's just going to freaking happen. It's just
Right.
the task lists you're going to do, calls you're going to make. But there's this 20% that also needs to get happen, but it's the most important 20%.
Mm.
So to predict your time better, you have to pull out that 20% and look at it and go, okay,
Oh.
what do you want me to accomplish in this 20% time? And that's a great topic to have in those 30-minute Monday meetings or whatever, whenever
Yeah.
those happen. But
Wow.
what is that 20%? And 20% of a 50-hour week is 10 hours.
Hmm.
So do you have 10 hours to dedicate to that 20%? If not, start with 5. Start with 5% of your time to dedicate to that stuff, that work. And that will help you to predict what's possible. And the beauty of this is this is a whole nother layer of things here, but if you can measure that, if you can go, okay, this is what I want to accomplish, this
Hmm.
is the result of accomplishing it, and then track specifically how you're going about making that happen with data, then you can basically create yourself a system and a process,
Yeah.
which then makes what you're doing predictable.
I love
Because
that.
yeah, because you've created such a good system of, if I make 10 phone calls a week to past clients, I
Mhm.
get 3 referrals.
Right.
So make those freaking calls. You're going to get three
Right.
referrals. Or if
Right.
I post to social media 20 times, it's a fat waste of time. So quit posting to social media, right? You're
Yeah.
able to measure your results, and it's all dependent on the business.
Yeah.
But the key is that you document it, which creates a system, which makes what you're doing more predictable. And then eventually that becomes so predictable, you plug it back into the whirlwind and pull out another 20%
Mm.
and focus on that. And you repeat. And then what you do becomes extremely predictable and almost turnkey. So you just give somebody else the keys to do the work that you already know exactly how to do. And they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's fantastic. That's awesome. I think one of the things that has been very challenging for people, especially since COVID, so many people are working from home.
yeah.
And we actually have been working from home since COVID. And then we just found out that the building that we are inhabiting is has been sold and they're downsizing. So we are going to be working from home, which is actually a great thing. But one of the biggest challenges, I think, working from home, especially if you don't have a dedicated space to work in,
Mm,
um, is shutting that computer. And that goes back to the who. And spending time, allowing work to get in the way from your family or you know from your friends and or whatever it may be, but the ability to say I'm done and put those boundaries in place. What advice would you give people who just really struggle with boundaries with work and themselves?
sure. Uh, okay, this one, some people won't do this and they won't be able to, but it's a huge deal. When I would, for me, it was a huge deal. So
Hmm.
about 2 years into the business, my laptop became, it just didn't work for what I wanted to do. It
Mm,
made it difficult for me to function at the level I wanted to in my business. And so it was a decision point for me. It was,
yeah.
do I buy another new laptop from Apple? Because I'm not in that infrastructure.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead. I like you even more now. Okay, go ahead.
They can be really expensive, but they last for a
Right.
long time. I have one that my wife uses now that's I think from 2017, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I couldn't run my business to it, but it's
Right.
fine.
Right.
Anyway, so I had to choose, do I want a laptop, some MacBook Pro or whatever, or if you're a PC person, some high-end Dell or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or am I going to go with a desktop? And
Mm-hmm.
I chose to go with a Mac Mini desktop. And this isn't an Apple ad by any means,
Yeah.
but it
Although it'd be
changed
okay if it were. Go ahead.
it changed things big time because when I'm done working, I can't take my computer with me.
Yeah.
I do,
Yeah.
yes, I have a phone. Yes, I
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
tablet. So yes, I can still access it, and I do.
Yeah.
But having a desktop made a big difference. So if that doesn't fit you, that's fine. But for those of you that, if you're willing to switch to a desktop, first of all, they
Yeah.
perform way better.
Yeah.
But that made a big difference for me. And then secondly, if you do have a dedicated space, close the door.
Yeah.
When you're done, close the door. Very simple thing. I don't have to close the door anymore. I've disciplined myself enough, but
Mm-hmm.
I needed to for a while. I got into the habit, and now I'm in
Yep.
the habit, so I don't have to close the door. But
Right.
and the other piece is turn off the freaking light in your office too.
Yes.
Not only
Yes.
because it's better for your home and
Yeah.
electricity
Right.
bills, but it doesn't draw you in like this
Yes.
dang magnet.
That's
But yeah,
true.
turn off the lights, close the door. The party's over. You're done
Yeah.
working. Pick a specific time that this is the upper limit of when you work, and pick a specific time of the when you start working too.
Yeah.
And stop, just don't work anymore.
Right.
Um, don't check. The other thing is, I have clients that get email alerts while I'm talking to them. And I'm like, do you really need an email alert? That every business owner is addicted to email, so there's
Oh,
no
it's
need to
terrible.
have an
Yeah,
alert. Yeah,
exactly.
So why do we need an alert? Turn
Right.
those stupid things and turn them
Yep.
off on your phone. Turn off the
Yep.
badges for your emails, because we all know that most people have like 10,000 unread emails.
Yeah.
Turn off the stinking badge so
Yeah.
you don't see it. So you control when you look at emails. And I struggle with this. I
That's
don't have
good.
badges and I don't have alerts, but man, I'm addicted to my email. So I don't
Yeah.
have this one figured out by any means.
Yeah.
But
That's
I
really good.
you have to cap your day and you have to create a foundation for your day too. So
Yeah.
those two pieces are really important. And take breaks. You know, I'd
Yes.
have something that I describe in my book called the magic of transitions. And it's the idea that when you and I are done with this conversation, or whoever's listening, when they're done listening, that moment is a transition moment. And in that moment, when I stand up from my desk to leave, I try to leave often after something finishes. I try to just go out my door and go downstairs, grab a drink or whatever.
Yeah.
Not alcohol.
Yeah. Not promoting drinking during the day like COVID did, right?
Right. Yes. But in that transition, there's three things you can do. One, you could just move on and let your brain go over where it goes. You can pull out your phone, whatever you're going to do. That's one option. A second option is to shut your mind down, slow it down, and listen and go, what do I need to listen to right now? What do I need? What's my body telling me? What is the last thing that just happened telling me? What's going on? Is there something I need to reflect on and we're talking 30 seconds. We're not talking meditation for 10 minutes here. We're talking the time it takes you to go from your office to your toilet. Because often that's what we do in our transitions. We go from our office to our toilet, or from our office to our car. Those are wonderful transition moments. The third option is to, again, listen, but instead of to your body or think about what just happened in the conversation, is to listen to what God has to say, or to what the energy has to say to you. I don't see things that way, but some people do. So that can be something that people can listen to. And I call that the magic of transition, because it helps this thing up here reset and get to a better place. Because I'm wired for a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And sometimes I need to slow down.
Right.
So
And it's okay to step away and take a nap if you need to, or whatever it may be. Those are good things. Yeah. I do have to have a laptop for my work because we are such a mobile organization. But one of the things that I've learned to do, and this is kind of a new thing, is since I've been officing, since we got kicked out of our office in a lovely, wonderful way, actually. But since I did that, I actually took over my oldest daughter. She's 21. She lives in New York. And I took over her bedroom and turned it into my master office. She doesn't know that yet. But I just leave the computers in here. And so unless I'm leaving for work, if I'm going downstairs and if I'm just doing something for me, I don't even take the computers with me. So, and that's a new thing, because I used to carry it literally everywhere. So
it's a badge. It's like it's a pride thing. And I don't necessarily mean pride in a negative way. I just mean we're really proud. We're running our business and we're business people and we're doing our freaking thing. And darn it, I've got the computer.
And I have to be on all the time. It's like, I am so the work never stops. And I think that's the thing we need to remind ourselves. It's going to be there tomorrow. And I always tell my staff, we are doing some important work. We do prevention education on sex trafficking, social media safety, healthy relationships, and we go into the schools. But I always tell my staff, we are not brain surgeons. And so no one's dying on the table. If you mess up, it's okay. And if you don't get it done today, no one's dying on the table. It's okay. So I think those are just things that are not always easy to remember, but so important. So important. I just love this. So tell me, what does it look like to get coached by Kyle? What do you coach people individually? Do you coach businesses? What does that look like?
Yeah, my primary clients are business owners, and my work with them is growing their business with less stress. That's ultimately what I'm doing.
Who doesn't want that?
I'm sorry, what?
Who doesn't want that?
Oh, exactly. I want that.
That's right.
For sure. Yeah. So that's the primary target is to grow my client's business with less stress. And the way that I do that is, yes, it's group coaching and it's one-to-one, primarily one-to-one, but I'm launching a group coaching on the 2nd of March, actually.
Wow.
I'm launching a group coaching, 7 people walking through a 4-month program. And in that program, we look at goals. We look at what is the vision that you have for your business? What's your org chart look like? A lot of people don't recognize the value of an org chart. Especially the small businesses that are, micro sized 2-3 people, because most people want to grow their business. And if you develop an org chart that's the prediction of the future of your business, and let's say there's 7 in the ultimate version of your business, and then you describe out what each role is going to be, and then you figure out using that predictable system you and I were talking about before. And I teach people how to do that in the program, but then you can plug in that info into all those, I call them job scorecards, but they're a version of a job description. You plug that all in, and then when you go to hire that role, you bring in Susie and you say, hey, Susie, you're going to be the sales or your accountant executive. And this is how you do the job, because I've been doing it for 4 years on my own. This is how you do it. And if you find any way to improve it, awesome, let's improve it. But follow this process to start. And then, so now you have predictable processes. I teach people how to do hiring. I call it SAGE hiring, and it's a very specific way that I walk people through hiring when I'm helping organizations with their hiring. And one of the last pieces is a review. We need to look at our systems, what's working, what's not working, and make sure that they're consistently improving. Because just because you got it dialed in for this season doesn't mean when the next quarter comes or the next year comes that there's not going to be some adjustments needed, because the marketplace is constantly changing.
That's right.
So there's ways. I just love your word. I think that's great. There's ways to create predictability in your business.
You can use it. Go ahead and trademark it. I don't care.
I think there's a tool called predictable success, I think. But anyway, I think it's anyway.
Okay. So don't trademark it, but you can use it freely. You can use it.
Right.
Yes. So tell us about your book.
Yeah. So it's called The Sage Leader, and it's all about helping people grab a hold of the mindsets and habits so they can be less stressed, more organized, and have more freedom in their business and their life. And the book walks you through, it sounds like a lot. It's not, because most of us have at least half of these down, but there's 20 habits and 20 mindsets. So I walk you through those habits and mindsets to help you become a sage leader. And the thing is that if you think, I gotta adopt 40 habits and mindsets total. No. You look at the ones that you're already really good at and you lean into those. And then you go, oh, I'm not great at this mindset or this habit. So I'm going to find other people in my organization or the future organization and let them be empowered to do those things because they're good at them too. So you basically deploy all those mindsets and habits within your business, but it's through the whole team, back to the who again. Wow. So I teach people that the SAGE process. I teach people how to deploy it into their business, and it's you could deploy it into your life for sure as well.
Yeah. Awesome. I just love what you're doing. You are clearly doing great work. And I love how, God took you from this place where really teaching you all of the elements that you needed to know to be able to help other people grow as leaders, grow their organizations, and just grow in life. So that's fabulous. Great job.
Yeah, thank you. I had this wonderful opportunity at the HR job where they wanted me to create systems and to help them get the right people in the door and help them with communication. And so I basically had 30 hours a week that I worked, and about 5 or so, if not more sometimes a week, I got to basically study. Wow. And so not only did I have those 9 years of mentoring, once I got into that HR job, I studied for 5 to 10 hours a week. And on my bookshelf, which nobody can see, but I've got probably 15 books that are like, just, I basically created Cliff Notes versions of them myself.
Nice.
And that has turned into all these programs and the coaching that I'm doing. And if I hadn't had that time, I mean, I'm so fortunate to have had that time, and I was paid to study.
That's
awesome. It's like the ultimate college.
That is fantastic. It's like getting paid to work out. Those two things, paid to study, paid to work out. Those are two good things.
Yeah.
Which neither one is true for me, but I would love to have those opportunities. So how can people find you?
Sure. Yeah. Real simply, go to sagemindset.com, sagemindset.com. That's the best way to reach me. There's a way to connect with me for a free discovery call. I love conversing with people, networking. If you network with me, you're going to find a connection with someone else. I guarantee it. It's just how I'd love to do that. And maybe even we could start working together. So
I love that. I think that's great. I'm going to give you a call because I think just in this conversation, I have learned so much. It's just great stuff. So definitely worth looking up. So final question, what does resilience mean to you?
resilient. I was looking at your word, and if you look at the word, it's again silent. It's re-silence.
Mm,
And I was thinking about that. I'm like, what does that even mean? And I think resilience, sometimes if we're going to be resilient, we have to go into ourselves and listen and be quiet and hear what's going on inside of ourselves, because the resilience comes from within, and I believe also from God. And and in order to hear that, you have to be very quiet. But it happens again and again and again. So that's why I think that word silence or resilience is very much being quiet repeatedly to hear how can you be re-energized to go forward, to push through, to make progress. So that, and second, the word progress is what comes to mind. It's not perfection, it's process and progress. If you put those two together, it's good. It's good enough. We don't need perfection. It's not going to happen.
I love that. Kyle, this has been great. I've learned so much. I've loved talking to you.
Thank you.
And I would love to have you on again. We'll maybe learn
Sure.
even more. That would be awesome if you're willing.
Yeah, I've got an app that I need to talk about still too. So next
Oh,
time
you
I'll
have
talk
a
about the
whole
app.
app? Okay, well,
Yeah.
say what it is, and then next time we'll talk about that. Yes.
So the app is based on Sage, of course, and
Okay.
it's what I'm having people do is when you think about sport. What's your favorite sport, Stephanie?
Okay, so my son plays soccer and basketball, so you could pick either one of those as long as he's playing. That's my favorite.
Okay, so we'll go with basketball because I know
Okay.
that sport best.
Okay.
At the end of the or toward the end of the fourth quarter, if the score is 80 to 85 and
Yeah.
and the team is down 80 to 85
Okay.
and there's no timeouts left and there's a minute left in the game, we know exactly what's going on. We know
Yeah.
exactly what the team needs to do. They need to score at least 6 points to win this dang game without letting the other team score.
Right.
If you, at the end of the game, you look at the box score and you see that somebody had this many rebounds, somebody else had this many points, et cetera, et cetera. You have a scoreboard and you have a box score of what's going on with the person, what's going on with the team. But we don't do that in our own leadership. We don't do that in our own self-development. And so I've taken Sage and I've plugged it into an app. And what you do is every day you go in there and you document based on one habit or one mindset related to self-awareness, one related to accountability on through the other two. And you document what's happened in a journal way with that particular habit or that mindset. And you do it in however many words you want. It doesn't matter, 1 word or 1,000 words. And what you're doing is you're shifting mindsets because you're looking at your day, you're reflecting on what happened, and then you score yourself on a 1 to 5 scale. It's based on a 1 to 5, but it's going to be some sort of a ranking like I did awesome today, or man, it was a crappy day, whatever.
Yeah.
Just sort of a ranking like that. And then you do it on all 4 behaviors. And at the end of a week, a month, whatever, you're going to see that you're improving. If you average around a 4, you improve 1% every day in that particular category. And if that's to me, that's the goal, 1% improvement in each of those habits. If we get that improvement, then that's a beautiful thing. Additionally, you get onto leaderboards with the words how many words you type in, the number of days that you've done it in a row, those types of things. And so there's this camaraderie and there's this gamification that encourages people to take action. So and then I engage on the app as well with messages and whatnot. So
nice. Okay. And that is called Sage
it's
app.
called
Is that
Sage Mindset app? Yeah.
Sage Mindset app? Okay. Well,
Yeah. And it's not quite out yet. It'll be out. It'll probably be out.
Very cool. All right. Well, we will for sure have you back. I want to hear all about that. And I'm looking forward to checking out more of your work with Sage Mindset. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening to Resilience in Life and Leadership. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening. Please share with anyone you think will benefit from this podcast.